It's the Call Kevin podcast. It's the podcast of your dreams. The Call Kevin podcast. Call and ask him things. Podcast heaven with Call Kevin.
That was beautiful.
Thanks. Thanks for listening. Call Kevin.
It's the Call Kevin podcast. It's the podcast of your dreams. It's the Call Kevin podcast. Call and ask him things. Podcast heaven with Call Kevin. Here's Kevin and Lydia.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Call Kevin. I'm here with my co-host, Lydia. Hello, Lydia.
Hello, Kevin. Hello, everybody. We're excited to be back.
We're so excited to answer your questions, to solve the world's problems.
We haven't done that yet. I thought we had already solved all the problems. and,
There's new problems
there
every
are?
single week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Our work is never done. Before we dive into our questions today, I want to shout out my upcoming shows. My final shows for 2022, I'll be in Albany, New York, Syracuse, New York, and Michigan City, Indiana. The details for those shows are on my website, kevinjamesthornton.com. We're just now starting to add new shows for 2023, including a little stint in England. I'll be in London, Cambridge, Brighton, Oxford, and Salford. Those tickets are on sale now. You can get there on my website, kevinjamesthornton.com, or you can search my name on the Live Nation website.
Nice.
Yes.
And you're actually in the process of working on a new show for 2023,
I am.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yep. I'm going to be returning to, if you're just now sort of following me, you might not realize that in the last year, I've done nearly 50 cities.
Wow.
So we're going to do it all again in 2023. So if you missed my show in LA or San Francisco, Denver, I'm doing it all again with a brand new show in 2023.
Yeah, very excited about that.
I'm so excited. Hey, before we dive in, as always, you can call the Call Kevin hotline at 323-364-0881.
323-364-0881.
Yes, and if you're outside the United States, use that number on WhatsApp. Leave us a voice note, and we'll answer your questions as well. We are multicultural, multi-city, multi-country. We'll take questions
Planet
from
Earth.
anybody. Planet Earth, that is our playground.
Yes. Why don't we dive into our calls?
Okay.
Now for some advertising.
Hey, if you're enjoying listening to the Call Kevin podcast, we could use your help. We're in a bit of a transition phase. This is all new and we're growing. It's my eventual hope that we can pay for the production costs through paid advertising. But we're not there yet, and maybe you'd like to join with us and contribute, helping to pay for all of this. So if you head over to my website, kevinjamesthornton.com, click on podcasts, I have a digital tip jar that you can click on to easily contribute if you're able. Even a percentage of you threw $5, $10 at us, it would help offset the costs until we are able to pay for all this with advertising. So head on over to kevinjamesthornton.com, click on podcasts, and use our digital tip jar. Thanks.
Let's take some calls.
My name is Edward McMullen Bomey III
Wow.
from Dallas, Texas. I have been watching your TikTok. I just wanted to tell you a story. When I was a kid, I was probably about 8 years old. I thought that dipping tobacco was the same tobacco that was in a cigarette. And so one time I unwrapped a cigarette and I put it in my mouth. And it was horrible. So I don't know if you can use that, but that was.
I used to chain smoke. You might not know this about me. And I have this memory. I was really young. And I was home alone, which again, I think at an age that wouldn't happen today. And I went into my parents' room and my dad had a pack of cigarettes on the dresser. I took a cigarette and I went and stood in the bathroom mirror. And I was like 11 years old, just staring at myself smoking a cigarette. What a weird memory that is.
This is how it began.
Yeah, I
You're
was like,
practicing a character already.
yeah, I was. I wanted to see how cool I looked. I didn't really start smoking because that was, kind of sinful. But then at some point, it was right around when I showed up for college. We decided that smoking wasn't a sin. It was just a bad habit. And some of us really went off the deep end. And I pretty much chain smoked all through through college, which is so weird now because I'm so grossed out by cigarettes now. But I used to stuff them in my face in the 90s.
You did. You stuffed them in your face when I first met you.
Oh, that's true. I guess I didn't really shake the habit. It seems so long ago, but I forgot that I was still smoking when I met you.
I remember you read a book that was like,
Yes.
You're not really a smoker or something. Do you remember that?
Yes, it's how to quit smoking the easy way. But what you just said sort of sums up the message. Yeah, I tried the patch, I tried the chewing gum, I tried to quit so many times. I was addicted to cigarettes. And then I read that book and just kind of walked away from it. Yeah.
Miraculous.
Something about the message of that book just really clicked in my head. And I was like, you know what? I'm done with this.
And it was like, I remember it was something, it's like, you're a lot of things. You're a son, or you're a father, or you're a mother. You're a lot of things, but you're not a smoker.
Right.
And somehow that spoke to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad you quit.
Thanks.
Much better for you.
Yes. Also, the caller was talking about dipping.
Boy, I grew up in a small town in Texas, and the boys dipped. They dipped snuff. They dipped tobacco. And I remember there were always, like, I think all of us have a story about the fateful moment where you pick up a Solo cup thinking it's like a Coca-Cola, a refreshing Coca-Cola. And you take a big swig of it to realize that it's somebody's spit cup.
It's so disgusting.
It is so disgusting. That might be the most disgusting thing that's ever happened to me. And it probably happened more than once.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
I have a friend who, why is it called dipping?
Well, I think with snuff, at the incarnation of it, there was like a little spoon, and you dipped it into the snuff tin.
Oh.
And then you put that snuff between your gum and your lip.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I had a friend who did it, and he also drank Mountain Dew. So he always had a empty bottle of Mountain Dew that was full of nastiness.
Yeah.
In his car.
Also, growing up on a farm in Texas, my father's father believed, as many people did, that if you got stung by a wasp or a bee, which happened with some regularity growing up on a farm, never let Uncle Charlie know that you had been stung, because he would reach in between his gum and his lip and take a little bit of that snuff, and he would put it on the sting. And supposedly it drew out the...
Did it?
I don't know. I don't remember. I was probably so grossed out and disgusted by the fact that he just put a big wad of snuff on my arm. Like, what's worse than that? I'd rather be bitten by a wasp.
Yeah. God. Anyway, kids, don't smoke.
Yeah, it's bad for you.
It's so bad.
Let's take some calls.
Hi, Kevin. This is Patrick from Oregon. And I guess I have a comment and maybe a request/question. I'm going to be 30 this year, pretty soon. I just got out of a long-term relationship of 7 years. And, my childhood was very much like a conservative Christian environment where, I didn't necessarily feel safe exploring myself fully and doing, just being myself. And I'm now in this new place in my life where it feels like everything is starting over. And I have the opportunity to maybe take advantage of that, and I'm also kind of simultaneously terrified. So, I'm wondering if maybe you could speak to a time in your life when you had to start from scratch. Maybe you've got some advice or a funny story. Anyway, love your content. Thanks for doing the work and putting yourself out there. It's simultaneously very funny and comforting. So, awesome. Okay, bye.
Do you feel like you've had starting from scratch moments?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember, more than one really, but I came out of a particularly bad relationship. And there were a lot of common friends tied up in it. We we were living together. So I had to find a place to live. There was sort of a friend division that happened. It was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me in hindsight, because I think in those moments, for me, I learned how strong I was. I think that up until that point in my life, probably what got me in a bad relationship was not having enough self-belief or self-worth and feeling like I needed a man in my life to be complete. And going through that made me realize that I'm strong, I'm independent, I can take care of myself. So it really was, as horrible as it was, it taught me a lot. And I think sometimes that's what we've talked about this before, how something really bad can happen to you. If you can get to a point that you can look and say, but what positive came out of that? I think that's the growth moment. Like, what did I gain from that? What did I learn from that? For me, I think that's the most telling thing that happened coming out of that situation.
I feel like I've had a very high number of starting over moments. And again, a lot of that, it has to do with my break from the church. I think it sent me on a cycle of, if I got to a point where things seemed difficult, I would just pack my bags and leave and start over. I've done it so many times, and probably in an unhealthy way. Maybe not always, but, even up until my late 30s, I think I was still sort of like packing up and leaving.
I remember a great packing up and leaving story.
Yeah.
So you were at a crossroads and you were trying to figure out what to do with your life. And you decided that you were going to go for, I think, like a month or so. You were going to live at Short Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
And you bought camping equipment. I remember you set a tent up in my living room and like slept in it for a night to test it out. But you basically put everything in like maybe one waterproof tub, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I drove you out into the wilderness.
Yeah.
And you were going to live in a tent. You were going to learn to pickle things.
Yes.
And you were going to commune with nature, which lasted a very brief amount of time. My favorite part of this story is that from your tent in the middle of nowhere, you were able to purchase a new iPhone.
Yeah.
And have it delivered so that you could sort of reconnect with the world. And you didn't stay long.
I didn't last very long.
No, you didn't last very long.
That was the end of a super weird series of events, because you were talking about, you had a sort of a bad relationship ending. I had been living in Los Angeles and had probably the worst experience of like love and relationship of my life, the most painful for sure. And I left LA, and you actually drove with me across the country. Yeah. But I was very, very heartbroken and sort of at the end of an era. We drove back to Nashville. I then went on the road for a year doing like a one-man show that I had written. And then from there got into another sort of weird 3-person polyamorous kind of relationship that also ended kind of heartbreaky. And from there, I packed up my bags and moved to New York.
That's right.
And I was just like running and lost. And like some of you have heard me tell the story where I was living in New York with taking care of this lady's cats. And I spent it snowed like crazy. And I just sat in this apartment by myself with her cats. And she was super eccentric. She wanted me to leave this cassette playing of Buddhist chanting monks because she wanted to raise the cat's vibration. So I did. I would leave this cassette playing of chanting monks, and I have this bizarre memory of this like cold, cold New York winter, staring out the window with these cats and monks chanting in the background. And that was like my whole winter. And I left New York and I came back to Nashville in the spring, and that's around when that weird summer in the forest was happening. Yeah. So I think I stayed with you for a second. I got some camping equipment. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go to nature. It was this weird summer-long thing where we were building a log cabin, and there was a guy who was an expert in fermenting things. So we were gonna like ferment stuff, and it was gonna be this summer disconnected from technology. I did not last long at all. I was out there for 3 weeks, maybe. I was like, get me out of here.
I felt like you're a kid at camp. Like, can you come get me at camp? This isn't working out on my new iPhone.
But that was me. That was me packing up and starting from scratch over and over again. I've just done it a lot, you know. And I think if you're someone who hasn't, like, sounds like this caller is at 30 for the first time, feeling like there's going to be this chapter starting from scratch.
Yeah.
It's scary, I guess, if you haven't done it.
A 7-year relationship is a very long relationship for a 30-year-old, too. I mean, that's some very formative years.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that
So to venture out on your own for the first time as an adult, really.
Yeah. Yeah. But do it. Be brave. Go out there and discover what's out in the world. And remember to look back at that relationship, as painful as it can be that it's ending, and try to look back and see if you can pinpoint the positive things that came out of it. I think that's the healthiest thing that we can do in those situations.
We learn and we grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now for some advertising.
Hello, everybody. My name is Terrell, aka Minty Bongwater, and I am here to talk about my tea brand, Minty. I have 5 different kinds of tea that are hand blended with a lot of love and intention. I have a mango hibiscus tea, blueberry coconut, apple cinnamon, pina colada, and watermelon mint. All of these teas can be purchased at mintybongwater.com/tea. Once again, that's mintybongwater.com/tea.
Hi, David Russo, beautiful Lake Tahoe, California, and in the North Shore. Kevin, you and I have the same path. I'm 47, came out in my 20s, and as a almost 50-year-old out gay male, how do you feel about your body as it's changed and pounds have come and gone? And of course, the body norms that are so prevalent in the LGBTQ community. Have you found peace with your body? I haven't. Love to hear your thoughts. And thanks. You're so fun. Thanks for everything. Bye.
I remember when I was in college, I thought I would look at my body and think that I looked not muscular enough, or that I was even overweight in college. Like, I remember multiple times I went on the Atkins diet, which was, a very popular diet at the time. And I was like the thinnest I've ever been, but I was like, in college, I thought I was fat. And I'm almost 50 also. And it's like I have none of those thoughts today, even though I'm like probably 50 pounds heavier than I was in college. 50 pounds ago, I thought I was fat.
I know. There's that crazy meme that went around that said, I wish I was as thin as I was when I thought I was fat.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, for me, I love, this sounds so ridiculous, like positive self-image, but I love who I am today. I feel like I've earned it, and I mean, the pandemic didn't help, I basically stopped exercising. And I have moments where I'm like, well, it'd be healthier if I exercised. And I had a couple moments during the pandemic, but then the variants knocked me out of my groove. Like when we first got the vaccine, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get back into yoga. I'm going to start hiking. And then the Delta variant came around. It's like, okay, I guess I'm not going back to yoga. And then, you know what I mean? We kind of got faked out twice.
Yeah.
And, so I look at my body now and I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely like a 50-year-old man who could shed a few pounds, I guess, according to the doctor. I just really like who I am. I know that sounds corny and cheesy, but I care less if people think I'm hot. That was so important to me. That people thought,
absolutely.
And it's like, I care less about that.
And I think the more that you come into your own, you learn about yourself, you get some experience behind you. I think for me, there are now more important things, being a good friend, being good at what I do. I mean, I think there are things that I take value in. over and beyond my looks and my body. But I also, so often, I have 2 younger nieces, and I say to them all the time, every now and then look in the mirror and just appreciate your body, because nobody gets to keep it forever.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get to keep it forever. So appreciate it while you have it. And then as you grow and learn more about yourself, take a deep look inside and learn to appreciate all the things about yourself.
It's the inevitable part of a human life that our bodies change and then we die.
There's a, wow. Let me think about that.
That sums it up, basically.
There's this great cartoon that I found years ago, and I've actually kept a copy of it, and it's the cartoon script, and there's like a small baby, and then it's like a toddler and an adolescent and a teenage and an adult, and then it kind of goes all the way down to this old woman that's like, kind of haggard and gray and is walking on a cane. And it says nothing until the very end. And the little woman says, well, that sucked. I don't know why. That makes me laugh for some reason.
That's funny. Yeah. I mean, everyone's relationship with their appearance and their body, that's so personal.
Yeah.
And, I'm not, I hope I'm not misrepresenting myself, because I have moments where I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, how did I get old? And I'm not even old in like the whole scheme of things, but it's just like, especially like I didn't really age at all until my 40s. And when I remember like in my late 30s, people would be like, how old are you? And I'd be like, I'm 39. And people would be like, whoa, that's crazy. You look so great. And now that I'm 49, people ask and I tell them, and they're just like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, that's
makes sense.
That seems to add up. And I don't know. It's a complicated process. Sometimes I do look at myself and I'm like, you could lose a few pounds. But I really love wine and cheese.
Oh, so good. So good.
I don't like making myself do things.
Now we're getting to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
Also, old age isn't so bad when you consider the alternative.
Yeah.
And
also, I today think that lots of different body types are attractive in a way that when I was young, I couldn't see. I think when you're young, like you get caught up in this like mindset of, we've all heard a 20-year-old go on about, I want someone who takes care of themselves and exercises and takes care of themselves and takes care. And it's like you're obsessed with something, because people can be attractive in a variety of ways. When we're young, our standards are effed up.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Also, I'd like to say that it sucks a little bit because men age more gracefully than women. But
what do you mean by that, though?
But I think it's true if you look at
how society sees it.
How society sees it. You look at Sean Connery and you're like, oh my God, he's the sexiest man alive. He's gorgeous, But I think society is harder on women aging. Yeah. And also as a person who is out there in the dating world, a man who's in his 60s and in good shape is probably going to date a woman in her 40s because they can. But a woman in her 40s is not necessarily going to date, it's just a different standard.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think if a woman is in her 60s, she's probably not going to get to date a 40-year-old man. But a 6-year-old man can date a 40-year-old woman. And that happens a lot, which, means for me, dear God, I'd be, dating somebody who was 120.
And is that just straight up misogyny, do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. All right. Well,
solving the world's problems.
I know. One question
Not
at a
at
time.
all.
Let's take another call.
Hi, Kevin. My name is Susan, and I'm calling you from Boston. But much like you, I grew up in the Midwest as a queer person. I grew up in Indiana, actually, and I think probably near where you did. And I've spent a lot of time in my life trying to explain to people the uniqueness of being kind of a gay or lesbian, bi or trans person in the Midwest and what makes it challenging. Because it's not like everybody is conservative, not everybody is Christian, but the culture is kind of steeped in that. And I just wondered if maybe you could take a shot at trying to explain what is it about being gay in the Midwest that makes it uniquely challenging, and what, if anything, can we do about it for all of our queer and trans future generations to come? Thanks, Kevin. Look forward to your show.
My Midwest memories are out of date. Like my coming of age years in Indiana were 30 years ago. And I've not lived in the Midwest since then.
It was the 90s.
Yes. It was the 90s. And so I don't know that I have a sense of what it's like today, because I left there and I've spent my entire adult life in larger cities around progressive people. I will say, and I don't mean this as like a jab at my hometown, but when I go back there, I don't remember it being so conservative. Like when I go back to my hometown for Christmas or something, it's like, I guess it probably was like this, and I was just kind of doing my oblivious high school thing. But sometimes I'm like, wow, this would be a hard place to be gay.
Yeah. But don't we think that, I know that this caller is in the Midwest, and so that's their experience, but it's really kind of crazy. Like even in California, I mean, there's San Francisco in the Bay Area, and there's LA and San Diego, but between those is rural, farm town, conservative. So I think in the larger cities, you're more likely to run into more liberal, more accepting people. But I think it's a very common experience in a lot of places in the United States where it's more conservative, and maybe you have to work harder to fit in or to find your tribe or to, feel understood. And, maybe that's something, is just to kind of know you're not in this alone. And I just think there are a lot of people out there that probably feel that way.
Yeah. And I think we've said this before on the show, but we're so much more polarized today. Before the internet was a thing, you weren't like in real time aware of how every person in the world thought all at once. Your information came slow. It came in the newspaper, on the nightly news, on just a handful of channels that we all watched at the same time. And in that era, in my memory, like you heard about gay people in a negative way at church, but it wasn't on like the forefront of everyone's mind or in the culture. Like right now, like a lot of like more conservative politicians are sort of using LGBTQ people to stir up their base, to spread misinformation that, that LGBTQ people are these like predatory creatures, kind of painting a monster that isn't really there. Like, and that's like on the consciousness of America, especially for like very conservative people or in smaller towns. So if you're like a young person growing up in that atmosphere, if your mom and dad are watching Fox News every night, it would be a different kind of difficult than it was for me. Because I could kind of like hang out in the shadows in a way that I don't think you could today.
I think so. So, I mean, you're saying that, you're a little disenfranchised, I think, from that now, but do you have any advice about what to do if you're feeling that way?
That's again, also the positive power of the internet is that you can connect with people hundreds of miles away. You can find, you said like your tribe, in a way that you couldn't 30 years ago, because you can like get online and find people who will support you. It's not the same as them being in your community, but that's like I was saying, when I go home sometimes, It's just like, wow, did I grow up here? I mean, I did, but people are different now. We're so aware of like these polarized opinions, politicians pitting us against each other. It's a mess.
Yeah, it is a mess. It is a mess. And I think for myself, what I might say is we talked in an earlier episode about allies. And those are people who aren't just there, as you said, for a warm, I have a warm, fuzzy feeling for you, but somebody who is willing, whether or not they are the same as you, but they're willing to stand up for you, to speak up for you, to do the right thing for you. And I think that I would say try to find those allies. I think it's important to find people who are like-minded, but also find your straight allies. Find the people that really are there for you and will stand up for you and fight for you.
Yeah. The way that it seems so sudden with all these don't say gay school things that have happened, I was surprised, and maybe this is just me living in a liberal bubble, but I was a little taken aback at how quickly this like old-fashioned idea, it's like from the 50s or something. It's like, beware the homosexual. Or, and it's like, what? Where did that come from? I thought that was like, that's like old-fashioned homophobia. Like, gay people are coming after your children. It's like, that just blows my mind that in 2022, it seemed like suddenly a lot of people were just on board with that. And it's like, that I was surprised. And maybe that's being naive. But it's like, how did that work? Like that seems like something that couldn't have taken hold, but it did.
It did. It's that feeding of misinformation.
Yeah.
And that thing that happens now where you can say something that's true, but it's like, oh, that's fake news. I mean, that whole fake news thing, it works both ways. That's actually news and that's actually fake news. But if you believe one way or the other,
you can't get anywhere if everyone thinks the truth is watery.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's take some calls.
Hey, Kevin. My name is Billie Jean. I'm calling from Pittsburgh. So I'm 29 and I've been, living my adult life having straight sex, and I'm just now wanting to not have straight sex anymore. But like porn is so bad, particularly if I'm trying to figure out how to have sex with a person with a vagina. Where do I go to learn how to have sex in like a healthy way and not have to just rely on the people that I'm hooking up with to completely educate me? Thanks.
It's a weird question for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kevin, what do you have to say about that? Now, I have an idea.
Great.
Well, okay, to some degree, yes, pornography is not going to give you a real clear picture of what sex is like. True. I think that you have to find someone that you trust that perhaps has been having lesbian sex, and you need to just have a very honest conversation with them. Because I think that there's a fear that if we go into having sex with somebody and we don't know exactly what we're doing, that we're not cool or we're not attractive. And sometimes you have to fumble around and, figure out what you're doing. But I think the best advice would be to see, could you find somebody that's a friend that would talk to you and, talk to you about the ABCs of lesbian sex.
Do you remember that era of music? It was around, oh God, it was like, let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. There was like this whole era of like talking about sex.
It was the 90s.
It was. I mean, I think it was spurned by the AIDS era, and so like just talking about demystifying sex just so it was safer. But there was a whole like style of music that was like talking about sex.
Yeah. Interesting you talk about like the AIDS era because I am very grateful that I lost my virginity and learned about sex before then. And I was in Los Angeles when, that started happening. And I remember really feeling sorry for this generation of young people that were just learning about sex and having their first sexual experiences and losing their virginity in the middle of that time when it was so scary. Like, I'm so grateful that that wasn't my journey because I think that just would have been a really tough time
Yeah,
to
that's
come into your sexuality.
that's
And,
me. Yeah,
especially for, for straight and gay people, but especially for gay people.
yeah. I mean, that's all of the messaging I got in my high school years was, if you have sex, you're going to die. So there was that kind of fear and stigma around it.
Yeah. So at least you're learning about the sexuality in a time that's safer. And we still need to be safe. We still need to, have safe sex. But I think this is a better time to definitely be exploring your sexuality.
Well, it's funny that I've noticed that at some point the world kind of tuned out about HIV and HIV medication, and like it's becoming a little more well known. But like I would say most of the straight world is probably oblivious to that. Like the fact that if you're HIV positive and on the medication and you're undetectable, you can't pass it to anyone. There's still like a stigma, I think, among straight people that having sex with an HIV positive person would be very dangerous and a bad idea.
Yeah.
But you're actually, if I were faced with having sex with someone who did not know their status, who didn't get tested, or someone who is HIV positive and undetectable, I would choose the HIV positive undetectable person, because the person who doesn't know is a far greater risk because they don't get tested. They might be carrying the virus untreated.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I guess, it makes sense, but the world tuned out about HIV education, but it's so bananas because that's all my head was filled with when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't really see sexuality past AIDS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So scary. Also interesting, you can Google anything these
Right.
days, right? But if you're like sort of Googling lesbian sex,
You're going to find porn.
You're going to find porn. Yeah. So maybe, I don't know, that should be somebody's, they should take that up as a cause to make sure that there are things on the
We need a new Dr.
internet.
Ruth.
We need a new Dr. Ruth.
There used to be
Absolutely.
like explicit sex advice on TV at night.
Absolutely. Dr. Ruth. She was German.
Yeah, if you're listening, you're like, what are they talking about? There was a couple of them, but she was the most famous one. But she was on all the talk shows. She was on TV at night, just like explicitly talking about sex.
Yeah, absolutely. And how to have an orgasm and how to
Yeah.
please your partner. And yeah, what a world that was. We need that to come
We
back.
do.
We need these, because there are people out there that need to know, like, how do we make this work? Can we put that on our list of things to do to help save the world?
Yes, that we can maybe Call Kevin becomes a super explicit sex advice show.
I think that's probably our calling.
Yeah. Well, everybody, I think that brings us to the end of another episode of Call Kevin.
Absolutely. This has been a good one, and we thank everybody who sent a question in. Please keep sending us questions. You can call us at 323-364-0881. Record a question for us, and we will answer it on an upcoming episode.
Yeah, and please head over to my website, kevinjamesthornton.com, for my upcoming tour dates, my merch store, and more.
Absolutely.
You've said absolutely like 87 times.
Have I?
Yeah, we're getting tired.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right, this is absolutely the end of this absolute episode. Everyone
It's been absolutely fabulous.
have a great week. Until next time, bye.
Bye.